Hey guys, welcome to Terry Dactyl. This is a podcast that we're trying to get started. Hopefully it goes well. Fingers crossed. Just to kind of explain the pun, a dactyl is a verse in poetry, either stressed or unstressed, and we all know we're Terry scholars. So kind of the pun right now we're going for is that we're Terry scholars going through periods of stressed and unstressed periods, and this podcast is based around getting the stories in the middle of your dactyl, the middle of your journey, to realize that no matter what happens at the end of this line of poetry, it's going to be beautiful. And realizing we're not alone in this, that we actually have a strong family around us, and truly trying to find what it means to be a Terry scholar, means to be a great person, and more importantly, what it means to just get through life. That's really what we hope this podcast becomes, and that's where we're going for it. Over here to my right or your left, this is Heather Medley. She is the scholarship coordinator / scholarship mom, as most of you know her. My name is Ryan Connor. I'm a senior Terry scholar, and we're trying to get this going, so let's see where it goes. Today we're going to start with my story and really try to see where it goes from there. I will be the host for this throughout the period, so in order to not be hypocritical, we thought we'd start with me, and then you guys can come in and kind of see just where this expands overall. So Heather, do you kind of want to get us started?
Yes, so since we're talking about stressed and unstressed syllables in poetry, how about you tell us some of the things that you're involved in here and how you handle all of that stress?
I think if anyone takes a decent look at my Facebook or Instagram, without a doubt, you can tell that two things happen. One, I like to take my shirt off at any moment. And two, I'm very big into being active and working out. That's really how I deal with my stress. I find that the more physical pain I put myself in, the less I recognize the mental pain from all the stress.
So what kinds of things cause you stress here on campus?
Stress, I'm an engineering major, not to be another one of those, engineering's so hard, but it is. It gives me a run for my money. It's very stressful. There's times to where I'm up very late at night. I still try to wake up early in the morning. I'm very sleep deprived every now and then. Of course, social stress. You got the girls, you got the football games.
So you're a senior now. Let's talk about how you've grown and how you've handled your stress.
In all honesty, I think I've said this to many people who are probably watching this, and I think I've said this to you a couple times. If I could go back in time to 18-year-old Ryan and just beat him up, I probably would. Coming into college, I think I was pretty immature, even more full of myself, if you can believe that. I'd say I needed a lot of room to grow. And I think the stress combined with college and in home life kind of got me there.
So what other ways have you grown through college?
As far as growth is concerned, outside, of course, the physical gains, I'd say my study habits have increased. I've gotten much more efficient overall with handling people and life. I'd say probably my biggest growth overall has been my work ethic. That sounds kind of weird. I think in high school, a lot of us, Terry Scholar or not, everyone out there, kind of was a little lazy in high school. You just kind of show up, you take the test, maybe study 5 minutes before, and you're perfectly fine. I remember one of my first exams here in college, I think it was physics. I tried to do that, I got a 30. The class average was like a 70. It was a big slap across the face really soon, and I'd say it was a pretty good wake-up call for me. It was making me realize, hey, you're not as smart as you think you are. In fact, you're not very smart at all. You're going to have to work very hard to appear smart, and it took me some time to get that, but now I think after 3 years, I finally learned that talent takes you far, but work ethic takes you farther.
It does. What kinds of things have you worked on? Who was Ryan before?
I think 18-year-old Ryan, a little lazy, a little full of himself, and in all honesty, as weird as it sounds, wasn't very emotionally mature. He was very unwilling to talk about his feelings, not saying I'm any better now, but at least recognize I have them. That's really where a lot of it has been, is emotional growth and work ethic, and that's taken a very long time for me to get to the point. I think if we tried to do this podcast, or if I tried to do it when I was 18, 4 years ago, God, it sounds so weird to say that. It goes by fast, guys. I would not be willing to do that. I would not be willing to get my story out there. I would not be, I'd say, the best person to help people share their stories. I would not be half the man I am now. That's how little I think of myself when I was that young. I know that sounds so weird to say in 4 years, but you really grow quite a bit going from the high school environment to the college environment. It's quite drastic, actually.
So what is your story?
My story, I think every Terry scholar or anyone coming to college has a story. And I think one thing that we constantly do is we don't like pity, or at least that's how I am. We don't like pity. Most of us don't like drawing attention to ourselves in that manner. We don't like talking about what made us who we are. Like it or not, I think everyone's story really has defined who they are as a person. And I think it's taken me a long time to finally be willing to kind of share my story. I'm really hoping that through this podcast, we'll be able to help other people share their story. Because I feel like it's one thing to just tell people your story, like just kind of telling people, talking to a wall, just kind of pouring it all out there, kind of shotgunning your feelings. I think that's pretty easy to do. But I think it's completely different to kind of talk about your story and kind of discuss it and see where it goes with people. It's completely different. So I guess to kind of start diving headfirst in the deep end to what this podcast is really about, which is sharing your story and how you got here, we can kind of start with, I guess, my family life and how my family life kind of defined who I am. And I want to preface all this by saying I love my family. I love my parents. I love my older brothers. I love my older sisters or sister-in-laws, whatever you want to call them. And I love my little brother, Brendan. I love all of them to death. But I think one thing people my age and younger than me don't realize is that just because you love someone, you don't always have to like them. Is that true?
Yes.
That's one thing I have kind of learned, is that love's unconditional, but you can still hate the person every now and then, and you're going to. I think that's a true sign of love, is when you hate them at some point and then you come back to them. I feel like it's kind of a circle.
You never stop loving them.
Oh, you never stop loving them, but I mean, God, you just wish you could like them.
We all have pretty unlovable moments.
Yeah, we do. I've had my fair share, that's for sure. Surprised you keep me around. So I guess kind of getting the story started, I think very few people know actually my story here at Texas Tech. I think you and maybe a handful of other people, I could count the number of people who know my story here, and even then they don't know the entire story. So I guess this is the first documented case of Ryan actually opening up and sharing his story across the board, to kind of set the precedents and not be hypocritical for what we want this podcast to be. So I guess finally diving in instead of just dancing around the fire. So for my story, it kind of all starts with my little brother. My little brother is the basis of my Terry story, who I am as a person. I honestly believe I would not be a quarter of a man I am now without my little brother. He is my biggest hero. I believe that what he's done and what he continues to do every day of his life is beyond remarkable, and I wish to be a quarter or a half the man that he actually is. I hope he realizes that. For those of you who don't know, my little brother Brendan, he is severely mentally autistic, and he has Crohn's disease along with some other illnesses. So basically, to put it in perspective, my little brother is terminally ill and not mentally capable enough to realize what he's going through. So growing up, that is quite the combination to kind of handle. It's hard to describe to someone who can't mentally recognize really anything that, hey, life sucks. I wish there's a better way I could put it. We've never been able to get him to grasp why this is happening to him, and every day it is just beyond heartbreaking.
But that's his reality.
It's his reality. I mean, I think one thing people don't realize sometimes is just life just sucks. Sometimes there's not a silver lining. Sometimes you're just making the best of a bad situation, and that's all you can do. And that's really what my little brother's life is. It is just making the best of a beyond horrible situation.
And how has that affected you?
Well, you have him at one part, then I have two older brothers, Austin and Michael. They're twins, and to add to that part, they're off the charts. They are probably some of the smartest people I've ever met. They are so above. So in my family, you have...
And funny on social media.
Yeah, they're hilarious. They're very funny. They're so funny. So on one part, you have my older brothers who are off the charts on top. Like, they're above and beyond. And then you have my little brother who's so below. So me, no matter what I did, I was just kind of the average one. So with them being twins, I was kind of an impromptu middle child. So I think all the middle childs out there will rally and say didn't get enough attention. So just imagine that when your brothers are geniuses and your little brother is terminally ill. You very little attention across the board. And it's not that I'm against my parents. They did the best they could. And once my older brother was out of the house, it got a lot better. All that being said, growing up was very hard. Very, very hard. I grew up a little bit of time here in Lubbock, Texas. And I remember going to elementary school and other schools, and just some days, just the level of pity that I'd get. I mean, I'd have teachers I've even met giving me money, giving me cards, hugging me, telling me it's all going to be okay, you're going to be fine. If you need anything, let me know. And I just hate pity. Maybe I'm just too prideful of a person. Maybe there's people out there who enjoy it, but I'm just way too prideful for pity. And I know that's one of my flaws, is that I don't accept help. And that's one reason I'm kind of surprised I'm willing to do this podcast and help others, is because I've for so long pushed away the help that, in all honesty, I desperately needed. So elementary school was very hard because I was either the genius's little brother or the terminally ill child's older brother. I was never Ryan. I was always just another Connor. I really didn't have an identity to myself. And then things started to change around 7th or 8th grade year. My two favorite, my grandparents died 7th or 8th grade year, and Brendan got, I want to believe that was when H1N1 was going around, the swine flu. And Brendan got it, and he was in the hospital for a very long time. So my family was trying to juggle getting the grandparents buried, putting my older brothers through college, Brendan, dying on us. I think around that time, that was maybe the 6th or 7th death scare we've had. He's had quite a bit, which takes an emotional toll on you. So as you can imagine, during that time, I really fell through the cracks. I really did. I started kind of doing bad in classes. I'd say I started acting kind of weird, just kind of trying to get any attention I could during those years. And I think those were some of the hardest, at that time, I thought they were the hardest times I was going to have. I didn't think anything was going to get all that better. And unfortunately, I was right. Because everything that happened, my parents ended up having to file for bankruptcy. We couldn't afford the house we were in here in Lubbock, Texas. We had to move into a rental in Paris, Texas. So you can imagine the overall landscape change from West Texas to East Texas, especially for those of you who've been in the Paris, Texas region. I'm very grateful for what Paris, Texas has done for me. And I think at the end of the day, it probably was the best thing for me. But it's a very drastic change, especially from moving high schools is hard enough. Moving complete cultures after you finally built a niche for yourself freshman year, it's very difficult to do. So once we got to Paris, Texas, I realized it kind of was a silver lining. For the first time, no one really knew about my little brother. No one knew about my older brothers. I think for the first time ever, I wasn't Connor. I was Ryan. I had my own identity. I could make who I was. And I was able to roll with it for quite a while. And I really actually enjoyed my time in Paris, Texas. Everything being said, the school life in Paris, Texas was great. But even then, that was some of the harder years we had. Because my father decided to go back to school. He was commuting from Paris, Texas to Commerce, which is an hour and 30-minute drive one way. So he was going to school there while my mom was basically working on a middle school teacher's salary. So our only income for the whole family, those 3 to 4 years, the only income was a small East Texas town teacher's income, which as in Texas,
it's tough.
It's a low income in East Texas, small East Texas town. For those of you who are also from that area, and parents or teachers, you understand just how little money was coming in. So we had to try to juggle paying for my father's college at the time, paying, of course, for Brendan's medical bills, and at some point trying to keep me somewhat stable, because those were very hard years. So as far as everything's concerned, it was a very tough time. All that being said, I believe the one reason that my parents and I are so close now are because of those hard times. Because we really didn't have, outings or times, we'd cook together, try to scrape by. And I think that hardness and difficulty that the four of us went through really defined our relationship and why we're so close now.
Did you move away from your support system here? Did you have one in Paris when you got there?
No, it was just us when we got to Paris, Texas. That really the only people we had were us. And we had to kind of slowly build a support system there in Paris, Texas. And we got a little bit of one, but it very much became a centralized unit. Then once, I think around junior year at Paris, Texas is really when everything once again started to hit pretty bad. Brendan ended up having, I think he didn't go more than a month and a half without being in the hospital, and it just started taking a toll on everyone again. And I remember at one point, my parents sat me down and basically said, Ryan, we love you. We want the best for you, but you have to realize that college is not an option. And they weren't just talking about, four-year college. It was a serious conversation about how I'd have to work my ass off just to get the money for a community college. Like college, for them, it's always been a no option. My family, we've always been a work hard kind of old Irish West Texas family. You work through it and you see what happens. But the real realization was that college in any form was not an option for me without serious work going into my senior year. And I knew that right away. I knew without a choice that I had a year to get my life on track, without a doubt. And that was beyond stressful at the time. I think most people senior year you go into, you're just kind of like, hey, senior year, I've survived high school, let's all get it done. Let's not really worry, just kind of get it all going. And I did not have that option. And that, I think, for people who knew me in high school, my change from junior to senior year was quite drastic. I was not the same happy-go-lucky guy. I was not the same kind of blow everything off. It was a very centralized, I'd say somewhat autistic centralization on an idea that I had to do everything potentially to get into college and get scholarships for it.
How did you find the Terry?
I think I was applying on Apply Texas, and as it was coming up, I think the Terry one was listed on there, and I read it, and I was like, okay, this can kind of work out. This seems like a good idea. Let's see what happens. So, in all honesty, as bad as this sounds, I did not turn in my stuff until it was not. I think the last day to post market was the day I turned in my stuff. Like the last day, the deadline was like this time on this date, and I think I was 2 minutes before that time on that date. It was a very slow process for me. I, in all honesty, probably should have taken it more seriously than I actually did.
But it seems to have worked out.
Apparently they saw something. I guess playing hard to get worked out for me.
So if other scholars wanted to share their story, how would they do that?
I think the best way to kind of share your story and get it all out there is we're going to be putting this, I assume, on the Facebook, if you whatever you want to call it. Make fun of me. Apparently the makes me sound old. We're going to put this on Facebook. We're going to try to kind of get some more people involved and get it all out there and get a basic idea for what we want to do with this. We have an idea. We know where we want to take this. Heather and I have done a decent amount of work on this, and we're thinking there's potential across the board, but we're going to need some people's help. That's the best part about this scholarship is we're not just all major. We have mass comm majors, we have music majors, we have people who are great at photography. We can, I think, really kind of get the ball rolling and see where this goes and kind of get some stories out there for people who want to tell them. So I think when you first get it, you're not really that grateful for the Terry. I think some people are very grateful. Some people, like me, were just kind of like, okay, cool, I guess I'm going to tech now. And I think the potential as you grow later on really changes and you're willing to finally tell your story because it's coming to an end. That Dactyl of stress and unstressed time periods is starting to slowly come to an end for me. So I figured I'd kind of help other people get their stories out there, and for people who are just beginning their Dactyl to realize that at the very end of this line, even though there's been stress and unstressed periods, that line of poetry and the poem overall is going to be beautiful, and you just need to look at the whole picture and don't get lost in the forest looking at the trees.
So thanks for joining us for our first episode of Terry Dactyl.
Yeah.